In 1954, an American company built a machine so tough that 70 years later, no one has figured out how to stop it. Not bullets, not rockets, not half a ton of explosives strapped to the ground beneath it. The Caterpillar D9 has built highways, flattened jungles, and demolished entire neighborhoods. The Israeli military calls it the teddy bear. The people on the other end of its blade have different names for it. This story starts in the mud, literally. In 1883, in Stockton, California, a family of brothers from New Hampshire started making wooden wheels for wagons, the Holts. Charles came first, setting up shop in San Francisco. Then his brothers followed west. And finally Benjamin, the youngest, the one nobody expected much from, the one who would change everything. Benjamin Holt was obsessed with machines the way some people are obsessed with puzzles. He wrote in every new invention he could find, automobiles, airplanes, even a Zeppelin once. But his real fascination was with the problem sitting right outside his factory window. California's San Joaquin Valley had some of the richest farmland on Earth, and the heaviest farm equipment kept sinking straight into it. The soft, peaty delta soil just swallowed wheels whole. Didn't matter how big you made them. Holt tried wider wheels. He tried massive wooden wheels that spread the weight across a bigger footprint. Some of these rigs were 36 feet wide, required 20 horses just to pull them, still sank. So Holt did what engineers do when the obvious solution keeps failing. He tried something that wasn't obvious at all. In 1890, he built a steam-powered tractor, 50 tons of freight at 3 miles per hour. The farmers loved the power. The ground still couldn't hold it. Then, on Thanksgiving Day, 1904, in a peat field on Roberts Island near Stockton, Benjamin Holt demonstrated something nobody had successfully commercialized. He took the wheels off one of his old steam tractors and replaced them with continuous tracks, wooden planks bolted to a chain wrapped around the undercarriage, distributing the weight across a much larger surface area. A photographer named Charles Clements watched the test and said the machine crawled across the field like a caterpillar. The name stuck. By 1908, Holt replaced the steam engine with gasoline, more efficient, lighter, cheaper to run. By 1911, he trademarked the word Caterpillar. He owned over 45 patents. He did most of his inventing in a small workshop across from the main office with just half a dozen people. No formal engineering drawings. He told his pattern makers what he wanted, and they built it. Old school, hands in the dirt. Then the world went to war. Between 1914 and 1918, over 10,000 Holt Caterpillar tractors shipped to Europe. The British, the French, the Americans, they all used them. These machines hauled artillery through mud that swallowed horses alive, dragged supply trains over dirt roads that barely existed, and inspired something that would change warfare forever. British General Ernest Swinton looked at Holt's track machine and had an idea. What if you put armor and a cannon on this thing? The tank was born, not from a weapons lab, not from a military designer, from a California farmer's tractor built to keep combines from sinking into marshy soil. Swinton later visited Stockton in 1918 and publicly thanked Benjamin Holt for his contribution. Holt died on December 5, 1920, at 71 years old. 5 years later, his company merged with its fiercest rival, C.L. Best Tractor Company. The two firms had spent $1.5 million, roughly $28 million in today's money, just on legal fees, fighting each other in patent and trademark lawsuits. In 1925, they stopped fighting and formed the Caterpillar Tractor Company. Headquarters eventually settled in Peoria, Illinois. And from there, they started building the machines that would literally reshape the surface of the earth. We dig into stories like this every week. Engines, heavy equipment, military tech, the engineering behind the things that changed history. If you're not subscribed yet, now would be a good time. All right. The D9 showed up in 1955, and it showed up for a specific reason. A competitor called Euclid had released the TC-12, a crawler tractor with more horsepower than anything Caterpillar currently offered. So Caterpillar did what Caterpillar does when someone threatens its dominance. They went bigger. 10 prototype units, designated the D9X, were assembled and tested in 1954. The production model arrived the following year with 286 horsepower, powered by a 1,473 cubic inch D353 diesel engine. That engine, with various improvements, would remain the heart of the D9 for the next 25 years. The machine weighed around 45 tons. It could push more earth per hour than anything else on a construction site, and it was built with the kind of over-engineering that turns a product into a legend. Every component was designed for abuse. The tracks, the undercarriage, the drivetrain, all of it built heavier and stronger than it needed to be for any normal day of work. Because Caterpillar understood something fundamental about heavy equipment. Normal days don't break machines. The worst day of the year breaks machines. Build for that day. The D9 was never supposed to be a weapon. It was a construction tool. When Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act in 1956, launching the interstate highway system, 42,800 miles of road, the largest public works project in human history, Cat equipment showed up on nearly every job site in the country. D9s pushed dirt for overpasses, cut through hillsides, graded foundations for bridges, $130 billion worth of asphalt and concrete. 6 times the return on investment in economic productivity. Caterpillar also helped build the Hoover Dam, the Athabasca oil sands, where over 150 Cat machines built roads, prepared processing sites, and laid 430 miles of pipeline. They were everywhere the earth needed moving, but even while those highways were being poured, the D9 was quietly being drafted into a different kind of work, the kind nobody puts on the company website. In 1956, the same year the Highway Act was signed, unarmored D9s rolled into the Sinai Desert with the Israeli Defense Forces. No modifications, no armor. Just a bulldozer and whatever the operator brought with him. The IDF had figured out something that would define the D9's military career for the next 7 decades. You don't always need a gun to change a battlefield. Sometimes you need a blade. D9s filled trenches, built fortifications in hours, cleared minefields by simply driving over them and absorbing the blast, created roads where no roads existed. In 1967, the Six-Day War, D9s again. 1973, Yom Kippur. Same machine, same role. Push the earth, build the walls, open the routes for the tanks. By the early 1980s, operators were getting hit. Small arms fire, shrapnel, RPGs. The IDF decided the D9 needed protection, so Israel Military Industries, Israel Aerospace Industries, and the IDF's own restoration center, the MASHA, started bolting armor onto the D9L, the 460 horsepower variant introduced in 1980. They reinforced the cab with armored plate, added bulletproof glass for the operator and commander, protected the hydraulic lines, the engine compartment, the transmission. The machine gained weight. A lot of it. The D9L already weighed 130,000 pounds. With the full armor kit, it pushed past 62 metric tons. And then they gave it a nickname. Doobie, Hebrew for teddy bear. The name came from the Hebrew acronym for Armored Mechanical Engineering Equipment, which sounded like doobie. The soldiers liked it. A 62-ton armored bulldozer named Teddy Bear. The crew was 2, an operator and a commander. They could fit machine guns, grenade launchers, even smoke projectors onto the armored hull. This was not a construction vehicle anymore. This was something else entirely. Now here is where the story gets complicated and dark. In 2000, the Second Intifada began, and the armored D9 became the IDF's answer to a problem no conventional weapon could solve cleanly. Urban combat in dense refugee camps, alleys too narrow for tanks, buildings rigged floor to ceiling with improvised explosives, fighters barricading themselves inside residential structures and daring soldiers to come in after them. The D-9 could absorb punishment that would destroy lighter vehicles. RPG rounds bounced off the slat armor the IDF added in 2005. Belly charges with over 100 kilograms of explosive detonated beneath the machine. In at least one documented case, half a ton of explosives went off under a D-9. The crew survived. The machine kept working. During the 2002 Battle of Jenin, about a dozen armored D-9s deployed into the refugee camp. The mission was to clear IEDs lining the alleys, widen roads for tank access, and detonate booby traps before infantry moved through. After an ambush killed 13 Israeli soldiers in a single engagement, the D-9s were ordered to raise the center of the camp. The remaining fighters surrendered. Lieutenant Colonel Ofek Bukris developed the method further. A D-9 would ram the corner of a building, opening a hole. Then an armored personnel carrier would move troops in through the breach. Less exposure, fewer casualties. The IDF also developed the pressure cooker procedure. When armed fighters barricaded themselves inside buildings, D-9s would begin collapsing the structure around them. Slowly. Deliberately. Most surrendered rather than be buried alive. Human rights organizations documented the consequences in detail. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Thousands of Palestinian homes demolished across Gaza and the West Bank over the course of the Intifada and beyond. Tens of thousands of people displaced. The UN sent a letter directly to Caterpillar warning the company it might be complicit in human rights violations. Caterpillar's position remained unchanged. They manufactured and sold a commercial product. End-use decisions belong to the customer. In March 2003, in Rafah, a 23-year-old American activist named Rachel Corrie stood in front of an armored D-9R approaching a Palestinian home. She was part of the international solidarity movement, acting as a human shield to prevent the demolition. The bulldozer operator drove over her. She died from her injuries. The Israeli military said the operator could not see her from his position. The incident generated international outrage. A lawsuit was filed against Caterpillar in the United States. The court dismissed it on jurisdictional grounds. In 2017, documents surfaced showing Caterpillar had hired private investigators to monitor the Corrie family. The D-9 kept showing up in every subsequent conflict. 2014, the Gaza War. D-9s cleared routes and exposed more than 30 cross-border tunnels. Remote-controlled versions followed. The D-9N Panda needed no crew at all, just an operator with a portable controller working from a safe distance. By 2018, the IDF was doubling its unmanned fleet. So let's talk about what this machine actually is under the armor, because the engineering is extraordinary regardless of what anyone has done with it. The current production D-9 runs a Cat C-18 ACERT inline-6 turbocharged diesel engine, 18 liters of displacement, 474 gross horsepower. For context, that is roughly the same output as 4 full-size pickup trucks combined, channeled through a single drivetrain into the ground. The operating weight sits at 49 short tons without armor, roughly 98,000 pounds. The transport dimensions tell you how much real estate this thing occupies. 6.6 meters long, 4.35 meters wide, 3.88 meters tall. The blade options include the semi-U blade at 4.35 meters wide, controlled by 4 hydraulic cylinders through a single tilt hydraulic system. The blade alone, depending on configuration, can weigh over 8,000 pounds. The rear ripper is a single shank designed to crack frozen ground, tear through sedimentary rock, and excavate ditches. Swap it for a multi-shank ripper, and you can comb the ground, pulling up stones and debris in preparation for grading. The drawbar pull on the D9R variant reaches 71.6 metric tons. That is not a typo. This machine can drag more than its own weight across rough terrain without the tracks losing grip. The forward travel speed tops out at around 11 kilometers per hour. Reverse is actually faster at 13.6. Nobody designs a machine to go faster backward than forward unless they expect the operator to need a quick exit sometimes. That kind of traction comes from the undercarriage, and the undercarriage is where Caterpillar's real engineering genius lives. In 1977, they introduced the elevated drive sprocket design on the D10. By 1980, the D9L adopted it. The concept is simple but effective. Lift the drive sprocket above the track line, up and away from the ground contact area. This does two things. First, it reduces the strain and shock loads on the final drives because the sprocket is no longer absorbing direct ground impact. Second, it gives the belly pan significantly more ground clearance, which means fewer rocks jammed into the undercarriage, less damage from uneven terrain, and easier access for maintenance. The whole undercarriage is modular. Break down the tracks, pull the sprockets out, and you can remove the entire power shift transmission from the rear of the machine without dismantling everything else. For something this heavy, that maintenance advantage is enormous. Field crews working in remote mining operations or construction sites hundreds of miles from civilization can rebuild major drivetrain components with basic tools. No depot required, no specialized crane. Just experienced mechanics and the right parts, which Caterpillar's dealer network can get to almost anywhere on Earth within 24 hours. The torque converter deserves its own mention. The current model uses a stator clutch torque converter that automatically frees the stator when torque multiplication is not needed under low load conditions. In plain language, when the machine is not pushing hard, the drivetrain becomes more efficient. When it hits resistance, the full torque multiplication kicks back in. The operator does not have to do anything. The machine adjusts itself. This single feature reduces fuel consumption measurably across a full shift, which matters when you are burning diesel all day, every day, for years. The generational progression tells the real story of Caterpillar's engineering philosophy. 1955, the original, 286 horsepower. 1961, the D9G, 385 horsepower from the same 1,473 cubic inch displacement. The G model ran for 13 straight years of continuous production. On job sites across every continent, the D9G was the default heavy crawler. It just refused to quit. In 1965, a West Coast businessman named Buster Peterson had an idea. He hooked two D9Gs together to push-load the largest wheel tractor scrapers ever built. Caterpillar liked the concept so much they bought the rights in '68 and created the DD9G, 770 horsepower. Two machines bolted together as one. Peterson also built a side-by-side version pushing a 24-foot wide blade. That is a blade wider than most houses. 1974, the D9H, 410 horsepower, still the most powerful conventional track-type tractor Caterpillar ever built. Then the D9L in 1980 with the elevated sprocket, 460 horsepower. The heaviest D9 in history at 130,000 pounds. The D9N in '87. By 1988, Caterpillar had produced its 25,000th elevated drive sprocket tractor, and it was a D9N rolling off the line. The D9R arrived in '96 after an 8-year development program. The D9T followed in 2004, swapping the old V8 3408 engine for the inline 6C18 ACERT. Each generation refined the same fundamental idea: more power, more reliability, lower cost per cubic yard of material moved. And after 7 decades, nobody has consistently beaten it. The Komatsu D275A is the closest competitor. Respectable machine, solid engineering. But operators and fleet managers keep choosing the cat. Part of that is the dealer network. Over 2,500 locations worldwide. Parts available within 24 hours in places most people could not find on a map. That logistics infrastructure is a competitive moat that no rival has ever managed to cross. Chinese manufacturers like Sany and XCMG have tried to undercut on price. Has not worked. Not in Western markets, not yet. But the D9's legacy extends beyond construction and combat to something the military doesn't talk about much anymore: Vietnam. In May of 1967, the U.S. Army launched large-scale jungle clearing operations in South Vietnam using roam plows. The enemy's most powerful weapon was not a gun, it was concealment. The triple canopy jungle hid entire base complexes, staging areas, tunnel systems, and ambush positions. Agent Orange was one solution, the roam plow was the other. These were modified Caterpillar bulldozers, mostly D7Es, but also D9s, fitted with a 2.5-ton sharpened blade manufactured by the Roam Plow Company out of Rome, Georgia. The soldiers called them hog jaws. The blade sat at a 30-degree angle with a solid steel stinger on the left side, a foot-long piece of solid steel built for splitting trees too massive to push over. Each morning before the cut began, maintenance crews sharpened the blade and the stinger by hand to keep the cutting edge effective. Each platoon had 10 plows, 9 with cutting blades, 1 with a standard flat blade for cleanup. Each company had 3 cutting platoons. The operators sat in reinforced ROPS cages with headache bars across the top to deflect falling timber. Temperatures inside those cabs routinely exceeded 110 degrees. The operator got bounced over bomb craters, stung by bees, bitten by scorpions that crawled into the cab, and was continuously in danger of rolling the machine into a hidden tunnel or unexploded bomb crater. Before each day's cut, tanks and infantry fired machine guns, mortars, and 90mm rounds into the tree line to discourage ambushes. Then the plows went in. By January 1969, 6 full companies were operating across Vietnam, clearing 100 to 200 acres per day, depending on jungle density. They cleared the Iron Triangle, a 40-square-mile Viet Cong stronghold just 20 miles from Saigon that had been used as a staging ground for attacks for 20 years, the Hobo Woods. The Boloi Woods. During the April 1970 incursion into Cambodia's Fish Hook region, the 60th Land Clearing Company ate through 77 acres of jungle on day 1 and exposed 50 enemy bunkers and a 20-ton rice cache. On day 3, Staff Sergeant Richard Couch got off his tractor after clearing another 70 acres and found laundry drying on lines, kettles of rice still cooking. Then he turned from a bunker and saw 20 North Vietnamese Army soldiers standing 30 feet away. The 60th scattered. The 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment moved in with F-4s and helicopter gunships. 5-hour battle. Area secured. The commanding general of the 2nd Field Forces called the Land Clearing Battalion the single most powerful tool in frustrating and defeating the Communists. Over the course of the war, more than 300,000 acres of Vietnamese jungle were cleared by these machines. 27 land clearers killed in action, over 700 wounded. Competition between operators was intense. Each man tracked how many consecutive days he could get his plow to the cut. And the most famous daily production report in the program's history came from a company commander whose entire fleet of plows had gotten hopelessly stuck in monsoon mud before reaching the cut area. In the line reserved for acres cleared, he wrote one word: tree. That report, according to the official Army history, created great concern as it filtered up through channels. An investigation determined the unit's situation was genuinely impossible and that cutting down even a single tree under those conditions was a major accomplishment. And all of this connects to a broader truth about the bulldozer that goes back further than Vietnam. Fleet Admiral William Halsey, commander of the Third Fleet in the Pacific during World War II, was asked after the war to rank the instruments and machines that won it. His answer, in order: submarines first, radar second, planes third, bulldozers fourth, not tanks, not artillery, not naval guns, bulldozers. Because in the Pacific, the Navy Seabees used Caterpillar equipment to build more than 400 bases, 100 airstrips, 235,000 miles of roads, 700 acres of warehouses, housing for 1.5 million men, and storage tanks for 100 million gallons of gasoline, has deployed over 100,000 tractors during the war. On Treasury Island in the Solomons in November 1943, a Seabee named Aurelio Tassone drove his bulldozer straight at a Japanese pillbox that was pinning down the beach landing. He used the blade as a shield while his officer provided covering fire with a carbine. Tassone crushed the pillbox with the blade, killing all 12 occupants. He got the Silver Star. A major general in the Army Corps of Engineers put the whole thing in perspective. Victory, he said, favors the side with the greater ability to move dirt. The D9 is still in production today. The current model drops the letter suffix entirely, just D9. The C-18 engine meets Tier 4 final and EU Stage 5 emissions standards. It is compatible with biofuels and lower carbon intensity renewable fuels. There is automated blade assist that handles the load, carry, and spread portions of the dozing cycle with preset blade positions, reducing operator workload. GPS-guided grade control through Cat MineStar terrain helps operators reach specified grades without surveying or guesswork. Telematics through Product Link Elite stream location, operation, and condition data to fleet managers in real time, anywhere in the world. The machine has adapted to every era it has lived through. Diesel, emissions regulations, digital connectivity, autonomous operation, and it shows no sign of stopping. Caterpillar reported over 3,800 inventors contributing to more than 6,800 U.S. patents. The D9 is just one machine in a product line of more than 300, but it might be the most important one they have ever made. The controversy, though, has not stopped either. In August 2025, Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the largest investment fund on Earth at over $2 trillion, divested its entire stake in Caterpillar. The fund's Ethics Council concluded that Caterpillar's bulldozers were being used in what they called extensive and systematic violations of international humanitarian law, specifically the widespread unlawful destruction of Palestinian property. The stake was worth $2.1 billion. It was the first time the Norwegian fund had excluded a non-Israeli company over actions in the Palestinian territories. The U.S. State Department called the decision very troubling and said it appeared to be based on illegitimate claims. Senator Lindsey Graham suggested tariffs and visa revocations in retaliation. Norway's parliament eventually voted in November 2025 to pause all ethical divestments for a year while the fund's guidelines were reviewed. The finance minister said the world had changed since the ethical guidelines were first adopted in 2004. Meanwhile, Caterpillar's stock continued trading on the New York Stock Exchange as a component of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The company did not publicly respond to the Norwegian divestment. So what do you do with a machine like the D9? It built the roads you drive on every day. It cleared the jungles your father's generation fought in. It constructed the bases that won a world war. It tore down the homes of people who had nowhere else to go. It saved soldiers' lives. It ended civilians' lives. It is, by nearly every engineering measure, the most capable large track-type tractor ever manufactured. 70 years of continuous production, multiple wars on multiple continents, countless construction projects from the interstate highway system to the oil sands of Alberta. A machine that reshapes the earth itself, for better and for worse. The question was never whether the D9 could do the job. It always could. The question, The one that still hasn't been answered is who gets to decide what the job is. And there you have it, the Caterpillar D9. A machine that built the modern world and tore parts of it apart in the same lifetime. If you've operated one, worked around one, or have a story about one, drop it in the comments. And if you made it this far, go ahead and subscribe. We do this every week.